What's up, GameLeapers? This is Iggs, and in today's video, we're going to be going through the actual 13.3 notes that have been dropped, and the patch will be dropping in the next day or so, depending on when you're watching this video. So what we're going to be talking about are the champion buffs, nerfs, the item buffs and nerfs, and everything in between. And if you do want to master any of these champions, guys, then you know where to look, right? GameLeap.com. Linked in the description and comment section. Our challenger players and coaches upload the best content on the internet. If you don't climb a division legit from watching one of my guides, depending on if it's the actual role you play, I'll be surprised legit. Our high elo VOD analyses, our champion courses, our champion guides, they help thousands of summoners achieve what they want to achieve on the Rift. So if you want to achieve your season 13 goals, get signed up to get that exclusive access to our library of content, and let's get into the 13.3 patch notes. So we're going to go through these in alphabetic order. So first of all, we have Aurelion Sol. So not only are you getting a CGU update, but you're also getting your abilities completely adjusted. So pretty much for Aurelion Sol, you're getting a new passive that is going to work off Stardust. So your Q based off this Stardust is going to deal an additional amount of max health magic damage. Your W is going to increase the distance traveled based on those stacks. Your E, your singularity, this area is actually going to increase, and also the execute threshold is going to increase as well. Your ultimate falling star, the skies descend, the area is increased just like your astral flight. Now, what about your abilities? So your Q, your breath of light, well, this is costing a certain amount of mana per second depending on the actual points you have in this, and the cooldown is 3 seconds. And the other big change to Aurelion Sol is really to your ultimate. So if you guys have played TFT, right, that is pretty much what your ultimate is going to become. The falling star, the skies descend. So Aurelion Sol picks up a star from the heavens and crashes it into the earth, dealing magic damage, stunning enemies for 1.25 seconds, and absorbing 5 stardust for each champion hit. So you can just imagine the AoE this has, right? Now, gathering 75 stardust, remember this is your new passive, this transforms the falling star into the skies descent. And instead of just plucking a star from the heaven, you are dragging a constellation's worth of fury down from the cosmos, dealing magic damage in a larger area, knocking up enemies, not just stunning them for 1.25 seconds, and unleashing a massive shockwave that deals magic damage to champions and epic monsters and slows all enemies hit by 75% for 1 second. This sounds kind of huge, right? And I'm just thinking in my head like mid to late game, if you have some sort of wombo combo like with a Malphite, Leona, J4, Zac, something like this with Aurelion Sol in the mid lane, you are going to one-shot champions. So I'm super excited to see how Aurelion Sol performs. Hopefully he'll actually become a more dynamic champion. And Aurelion Sol mains, if you are out there, if any of you have tried this champion out on the PBE, let me know what you guys think and thought of it. Now moving on, we have a Mumu. So your Q's mana cost is increased, your E's base damage is decreased. Q's mana cost going up just means, well, you're losing more mana, whether you're supporting or jungling in the early game, but it shouldn't be too much of a big deal because, yeah, you're probably only getting like 2 all-ins off in the bot lane, even with these new mana costs, and in the jungle, you have the mana regen, and you're probably going to have blue buff. Your E's base damage going down, though, at early levels, so even though at rank 5, it's going to be higher. This means, again, that your all-ins as a support, as a jungler, you're fighting, they're just going to be worse off. The AP scaling is staying the same. Now, moving on to Annie, who's also getting some big changes, just like Aurelion Sol. So pretty much, yeah, even though Riot have called these nerfs, I don't really know how they are. But yeah, anyway, what you're going to start the game with now is your full passive stack. So you're going to have your stun ready. So invading as Annie is going to be pretty scary. Your E, your Molten Shield, well, not only is the base shield actually going up, but it's scaling off 20% more AP, which is huge. The cooldown is also going down by 2 seconds at each rank. And the actual retaliation magic damage you have, this is scaling off more AP as well, and is also getting buffed from 10 damage all the way up to 30 damage with 5 points in this. Now, the actual retaliation magic damage conditions, this is when an enemy champion auto attacks you and actually hits you with their abilities now, which is big. And also Tibbers, when the shield is duplicated onto him, that actually counts as a new shield and can inflict the same damage once per target. Now, speaking of Tibbers, the actual HP Tibbers have is scaling off your AP now. This is new and will make him like unkillable in the mid to late game. Also, Tibbers' resistances, they're scaling off AP now as well, and the movement speed is actually increasing at later ranks. These sound like massive buffs to Annie, honestly, and I don't know why Riot have actually classified these as nerfs. But yeah, any Annie mains as well, let me know in the comments what you think of these big changes. Now moving down to Jarvan 4. So your base armor is increasing, helps your early game. Your W's cooldown is decreasing. This means that you can just use it more, okay? And the shield strength now scales with AD, but the shield duration is decreased. Now, the shield duration going down isn't the biggest deal in the world because 5 seconds, I mean, even now when it's 4 seconds, right? Like, it's kind of whatever. But the actual fact that it scales with attack damage now is nice, right? This is actually going to be useful, and I think Jarvan's Golden Aegis, so his W, is now actually going to be considered an ability because it was the most useless piece of you-know-what in the game. Now, moving on to Cassante, so your health growth is actually going up, so Riot are buffing your base stats here, but they are nerfing pretty much everything else here. So your your Q3's knockup duration is decreasing. Your Q3 stun duration is going to a flat 1 second. Your W's Pathmaker, the minimum stun duration, is decreasing as well. And your ultimate's all out, you're losing 85% of your bonus resistances, which is the big impact point here because this affects you, especially when you get Jackshow as well. So K'Sante, because of these changes, will his win rate go down like 2, 3, 4%? We'll really have to wait and see just how impactful this is going to be, but these are legit nerfs. Now, speaking of legit nerfs, Kassadin is also getting nerfs. So your ease-based damage is decreasing. The cooldown reduction from nearby casts is decreasing, so when the enemy champions use spells, your ease cooldown is only getting reduced by 3/4 of a second now. Your ultimate's damage is also decreasing, and therefore the stacking is decreasing as well in terms of its damage. So Kassadin in the early game is affected here because of the E changes. This means getting out of the laning phase might be a little bit more difficult, and your Riftwalk dealing less damage at pretty much every point of the game. This makes your level 6, 11, and 16 spikes, well, just lesser spikes now. But will they still be spikes? We'll have to wait and see. Now, Kayla's also getting changed, so your exalted bonus movement speed from your passive is going up to 10%. This is kind of big. This makes your level 1 especially like kind of scary in the top lane. Like if you're running D-Blade with Ignite, Kayle, and Lethal Tempo, maybe even something like Ghost, right? Maybe you just run Flash and Ghost. You're going to be able to stick to champions a lot more. Movement speed for a ranged champion anyway, it's very important, right? Well, when you become a ranged champion. But this is actually a really nice buff. Also, your E, your Starfire Spellblade, the passive on-hit damage is increasing as well based off your AP. So this is really nice for your scaling once you start getting more of that magic damage. Now, Shadow Assassin Kayn is getting buffed. We'll talk about these. So your passive damage increasing, and also your Q's damage is scaling more off your bonus attack damage. And the base damage is actually staying the same. Riot did reduce this, but because it's staying the same, this is huge for Blue Kayn and might see him become really good again. Now, LeBlanc is also getting some buffs in the mid lane. Mana regeneration and the mana regeneration growth going up. Also, your Q's mana cost is going to be 50 at all ranks, and your ultimate, so your Mimic, the cooldown is going down at early levels. This is really good for LeBlanc because, yeah, your big issue is kind of just wave clearing, right? Especially against good control mages at the moment. So having more mana allows you to really like just poke them down, right, and focus on playing LeBlanc rather than just worrying about clearing waves all the time. But she'll probably still stay as like a counter pick into specific mid lane champions in pro play anyway, and I think that's how you should probably play her in solo queue as well. Now, Lee Sin is getting a Q-AD ratio buff. This is big. On top of this, even though your E's base damage is decreasing, which will affect your clear, particularly with camps like Raptors, Krugs, and Wolves, right? Especially if you want to actually start your clears at these camps, but the slow is increasing. But what you really have to worry about here is just Lee Sin, the Q-AD ratio going up. This is really good, and it means that landing that Q, especially if you're a skilled Lee Sin player, will be even deadlier. Now, Trundle is getting a buff, so your W's cooldown is decreasing at all ranks. Honestly, doesn't really do anything. You're using your W once on each camp to clear them. You're using your W in pretty much like one skirmish at a time. That's it, right? You're not going to be using 2 or 3 W's, so this really won't change that much. But still, it is a buff on paper, and that's why Trundle is in the patch notes. Now, Zac is the final champion getting changed here, guys. So Zac in the mid lane has picked up a lot of speed, right? And it is kind of obnoxious, and it's hard to play against, particularly for people in lower elos. So your W's AP scaling is decreasing, and your E's AP scaling is decreasing as well. Now, during the laning phase, you'll probably still be okay, because the base damage in your W is staying the same, but it is actually decreasing a little bit in your E. So after level 1, so from rank 2 onwards, this is going down, and it is scaling off less AP. So this means that Zac in the mid lane, hopefully we'll see him more in the jungle. But again, these aren't like the biggest nerfs in the world, so he still might be viable, especially if the enemy mid laner isn't a mobile mage type champion, maybe something like a Syndra, Orianna, Twisted Fate. Zac would be very scary into those champions. Now, moving on to the items. Radiant Virtue. This is getting changed. Cost is going up 200 gold. The Gilding Light cooldown when you pop your ultimate, this is going up to 90 seconds. But honestly, for most champions, like your cooldown, your ultimate cooldown anyway, it's going to be around 90 seconds. It's a bit like Trundle's W cooldown going down. I don't think this is really going to change that much. Also, the actual maximum health gained, it's actually getting increased by 50%. And the total healing is scaling based off 12% of your maximum HP over 9 seconds. So this is going from 8% to 16%. So pretty much what this means, especially early on when you get this right, because people might rush this as a first item. If you do actually have more HP as a pure tank, you're going to benefit more from this, but they are removing the ability haste where you actually gave your allies within a certain amount of range ability haste. This has just been removed. Now, Umbral Glaive is the other item getting changed, guys. So your cooldown on Umbral Glaive where you're killing wards going up to 50 seconds. Also, for ranged champions, we're dealing less damage to wards. So they are only going to deal 2 damage each auto attack rather than 3 damage. So when you see a trinket in a brush with your Umbral Glaive actual passive, you're not going to be able to one-shot it anymore. This means that they're more catchable, right? They don't just hit a ward and run out. They have to stay there for another couple of seconds. So this means for stuff like Ashe support, Caitlyn support, Kalista support, you're probably wondering why they've all been picked in pro play right recently. That's really the reason. Umbral Glaive Rush. So hopefully this kind of clarifies things in the bot lane, but we'll really have to see. Also, the trap interaction where you instantly kill traps, this is also getting removed. It will reveal them, but you're no longer just going to one-shot them with an auto attack. So big changes there. This will also affect other champions, of course, so like Pyke and Graves, but yeah, more so the ranged champions. Now moving on to runes, guys, overheal is getting buffed, so instead of actually like scaling the shield anyway off your max HP, as an AD carry, you're not building any like HP, right? So what's happening is it's just going to like a flat value here. So from 20 to 300 based on champion level, and Riot have stated that this is a buff from level 5 onwards. This actually kind of like maybe makes it compete with something like Triumph or Presence of Mind. These are the other runes in that tree, right? So we'll have to see what AD carries this will benefit, and especially if you're going something like Shield Bash with Bloodthirster, this could be interesting. Now, there are a bunch more champions, guys, we have to detail here. These are all the melee support adjustments, and all of these melee supports, pretty much, like I'm just going to condense it down for you because Freak made a massive video on this, is they are just getting buffed, so their actual like playstyle is rewarded more. So whether you're playing something like Thresh, you're going to be encouraged to max your Q first rather than maxing your W. If you're playing a champion like Rakan, right, you're getting more damage, and the abilities that actually matter in your Q is going to become an actual ability now, kind of like J4's W in this patch. So pretty much all these changes that you're going to read, it's just going to make these supports feel more rewarding to play, and if you actually land your abilities and play these champions well, that's what these changes are actually pointing towards. So maybe this will see like a change in the bot lane meta. So instead of seeing like enchantresses every game, we actually do see some melee supports, some engaging, some, you know, actual like proper team fights, some all-ins, 100 to 0s, but we'll have to wait and see, of course, until the data and gameplay begins. And the last set of changes, guys, to talk about are coming to the jungle. So I'm sure you've seen him well if you've been watching pro play anyway. There's been lots of champions who just pretty much, well, they farm like their red side jungle, and then they just run around the map. Like, they don't do anything else, right? Because if the enemy jungler invades your other camps, like, it takes them longer and they get less experience. So it's almost like, just who cares? Just run around the map trying to gank lane. So champions like Elise, level 3 gankers like Sejuani, Maokai, they are frothing this patch. So that's why Riot have changed, well, pretty much everything here towards discouraging these type of playstyles. You can still do this, of course, but they want both playstyles. If you're going to farm, if you're going to gank, to be viable. So that's what these changes are oriented around. And guys, those were the 13.3 changes. Those were the patch notes. Let us know in the comment section any questions, any thoughts you have on the changes, especially you Aurelian Soul mains and Annie mains out there. And until our next season 13 upload, this has been Eggs. Peace.